everybody. And let me tell you, never in a million years would I have ever thought I could say that a hobby has changed my life. Well, that is exactly what the hobby of keeping shrimp has done. It's pretty amazing. It is by far the most rewarding hobby or anything I've ever done. It gives me so much great satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment. And the goal of my channel is to help spread this hobby and help new people have success. I mean, the joy of keeping cherry shrimp is one of the easiest, most rewarding things you can do in the aquarium hobby. And so, like I said, my goal here is to help people get into this hobby the easiest way possible with the least amount of problems. So this is my take on keeping cherry shrimp, Neocaridina shrimp, and how easy it can really be. A lot of people like to think too much about it, put too much worries, but let me tell you, it really is that easy as long as you have a basic understanding of keeping a steady aquarium environment. Cherry shrimp are easy. Let's get into it. So, keeping cherry shrimp is easy. Let me tell you my story of how I got into keeping cherry shrimp. Now, I've been keeping planted tanks for probably 15, 20 years or so. So, I had a pretty good idea what I was doing on how to keep a planted aquarium. And then I started watching shrimp and fish YouTube videos and I got hooked. Let me tell you, all I did is set up a tank, and looking back at it, I'm lucky they lived. I probably didn't even have it really truly cycled. I had a little bit of a cycle going, but I just threw these cherry shrimp in there. I started off with 10 shrimp. I put them in a 20-gallon. After getting addicted to fish and shrimp YouTube videos, I decided I'm going to set up a bunch of tanks and try my hand at breeding. I thought, I mainly wanted to do guppies, believe it or not, when I first started. But then I set aside a couple tanks to try shrimp. So I threw 10 shrimp in a couple tanks, and before you knew it, I had like 50, 60 shrimp in a couple months. And I threw like 15 of those in a big 75-gallon tank. And like 4 or 5 months after that, I had thousands of shrimp. So in my case, it was really easy. And I think a lot of people put too much thought, effort in what it is, oh my gosh, this didn't work. Something died. I got to change things or everything. Now, something that Mark from Mark Shrimp Tank says is take your hands, stick both hands on your behind and sit on them. Unless you have something catastrophically going wrong, huge die-offs, chances are when you're new shrimp struggle. I think, and we'll touch on this later about the shrimp you start off with are so important. We'll get to that. We'll get to that later. But I got my shrimp from Lucas Brett's, good homebred shrimp, and meals are easy. My water is technically by the book too hard, but it didn't matter. I had a good stable planted tank environment and put them in, and they just took off. I never struggled. And most people who have some experience at keeping a steady aquarium really don't have too many problems. Like throughout the years of helping people shrimp and selling people shrimp and helping people get going, I've dealt with lots and lots of guys who are just like me. They've had aquariums their whole lives, 20, 30, 40 years, but they've never had a shrimp. And I always tell these people, there's been lots of them. I know Jeff Pelham at Pelham's Aquatics was one, and there's a couple other guys I've been talking to a lot recently. And they're just like, oh man, are they going to be all right? My GH is this, my TDS is this, my pH is this. You know what? Just chill. If you have a natural stable environment, your shrimp are going to do fine. Lots of these people, every single one of them that I've helped that was like me, that had been keeping aquariums for years and know what they're doing when it comes to keeping a stable environment, they're in some cherry shrimp and have hundreds and hundreds in a handful in just a few months. It really is that easy. Now, the experience that comes with having years of experience comes a long way. Now, if you're just brand new to keeping any kind of aquarium, you have a little bit of learning to do. You need to learn about the nitrogen cycle. You need to learn about water changes and lights and plants like that. That stuff is all key. But if you've had any kind of success at all with keeping aquariums, chances are you're going to do just fine trying out cherry shrimp. So, keeping cherry shrimp is super easy, but there's still some issues you need to know about, and let's cover some of those. Source water issues. Now, shrimp can be a little more sensitive to certain things than your typical community fish can. So, there are certain things in some water sources that, now, when it comes to people's water, if you're using tap water, every water is different. It's all different. My water is different than your water, and you see, unless you live in the same town on the same water source or have the same well, your water is not going to be the same. Water is more than just water. There's all kinds of minerals and stuff in there. Well, some of these things are not good for shrimp, but community fish that you've been keeping are completely unaffected. I've had this happen to people I know really well. I had one guy, he was selling Neos and guppies and stuff online and on eBay when I was getting started. In fact, I got my green jades off of him. And he moved on the other side of the mountain valley. He lived out west. He went from having a shrimp farm to he couldn't keep Neos alive. They didn't really die off. They just quit breeding. And same thing happened to another friend of mine. He tried shrimp, and they just never really thrived. He could barely keep a colony going, but they never would boom. He moved to a bigger city from a little town. He was in a little town and moved to a big city, and boom, shrimp bonanza, shrimp everywhere. So there are things like that you need to be aware of, and if your source water isn't the best or you have something in it, then you may need to look into buying RODI water or distilled water, or better yet, the most cost-effective and easiest way, if you can spare the money up front, is to get a pretty decent RODI system, and then you have to remineralize with special shrimp salts. That's a whole other thing. That makes it way more difficult, and that is like less than 10%, maybe less than 5% of people I ever help deal with. But it does happen, so that's something you need to be worried about. And another thing, when it comes to the water parameters with cherry shrimp, they don't need perfect. Perfect don't matter. They can do anything, but it's the changing, the fluctuations, the back and forth. So, and there's some people where your water source is. Some people may have, some communities, some water companies may get their water from a reservoir, then the reservoir goes dry during the summer or the dry season, then they got to pump water out of a river, and your water source fluctuates back and forth. You may have a difficult time. So I suggest just having a cheap little TDS pin. When it comes to Neos, you don't need to know everything, GH, KH, and all that, because the problems you're going to have with cherry shrimp, they're not even going to show up on those tests. I mean, they're just not. GH and KH, I've successfully had shrimp in a KH of almost 20, a GH of almost 30, and I've had it in a KH of 0 and a GH of 5. A pH of 8 and a pH of 5.2. And they live. I mean, it's people are trying too hard. Cherry shrimp are easy. Quit worrying about it. concentrate on having the most stable natural environment that you can. And I promise, unless you have one of them little weird things with your water, your shrimp will easily flourish for you. Here's something else that new shrimp keepers might not quite understand: just how little shrimp are. Adult shrimp are little, and a lot of your community fish, especially the more aggressive, predatory type fish, they'll pick a shrimp to death and eat its dead body. Don't get shrimp if you have barbs or grommies or, God forbid, cichlids or anything like that. Instant food. Don't even bother. You're just flushing money down the toilet. And baby shrimp are even smaller. Things like guppies and tetras and stuff like that will devour baby shrimp. Now, if you have lots and lots of hiding places and thick moss, you can do guppies and shrimp together, but you can do small, non-predatory fish. But remember, even guppies are going to eat the heck out of baby shrimp. Baby shrimp are very good. In fact, there are people who have commercial fishing ponds trying to breed, and they raise crustaceans, not neocaridina really, but prawns, the big guys, to feed their bass ponds. They buy them by thousands and thousands because shrimp and prawns and critters like that have a very high nutritional value. And so they don't just want to eat them because they're hungry. They want to eat them because they love it. And I think the biggest problem new people have with shrimp is the vast, vast majority of shrimp being sold out there today is trash, especially when it comes to neocaridina. They're produced in vast, you think I have a lot of shrimp in my tanks? They're produced in vast, vast ponds with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of shrimp. They're pulled out with a big seine net, and then sorted by grade. So the really nice ones that you might be finding for like $5 to $10, or I've seen imports for like $15, $16 before, the super, super high grades. They are like the top 1% of all the shrimp in these ponds. And then the rest of them are the ones you see on eBay that are like 30 shrimp for $50 ship. Well, the ones that are really nice and worth money, they are taken a lot better care of, and a lot more is done for them in most circumstances. On the other hand, the cheap throwaways that, the wholesaler or importer, they might be getting them for a nickel a piece. If you get shrimp for a nickel and you can sell them for $1, you get them to live long enough. But these shrimp go through a lot. They get caught, sorted at the farm or wherever they get sorted at. Then they go to a wholesale collector or a distributor. Then they might then they get shipped across the world. Then they go to another domestic distributor. These shrimp have been through so many things, and shrimp are tough. They need to be healthy, and when they're raised outside in ponds, they can catch all kinds of issues and diseases and parasites. And then shrimp are easy and tough, but like I said, they need steady and consistent. Perfect parameters ain't necessary, but steady parameters are. So when they get shipped halfway across the world and are gone through who knows how many different water conditions, probably not even being fed other than their dead buddies. So my advice on this topic is, if at all possible, find shrimp, get your shrimp from a reliable home breeder or someone who breeds the shrimp themselves, like myself. If you're interested in shrimp, you can check out my website, markschlagproducts.com, and see everything I got to offer there. But there's lots of other guys. If you don't see anything you like at my site, get your shrimp from someone who actually breeds them, and don't just pick them up at the airport. That is my number one tip for this video. Now, a lot of people will say when they get shrimp, I just want shrimp to have them. I don't necessarily want them to breed. Well, let me tell you, you know what the key to breeding shrimp is? Keeping them happy. Happy shrimp, happy cherry shrimp breed. That's how it is. And another thing to keep in mind, most of these shrimp are only going to live like a year and a half, 2 years old. So if you want to keep your shrimp population going and always have shrimp in your tanks, then the way I look at it is with shrimp. Now, I mean, I dedicate my entire house to breeding them now. But you can kind of look at shrimp as almost kind of like a pest snail. You give them a good environment, and they're just going to breed and breed and breed almost to like a nuisance level. Well, if you got them happy, that's what they're going to do. Now, if shrimp keeping is not your main goal, like if you have fish and stuff, you're not going to get that many shrimp because they're going to be part of the ecosystem, and that's it. The babies are going to get ate, the adults are going to get picked off. But if you have enough living and surviving, and that's okay too. Not everyone has the same goals. Like, I'm trying to breed as many shrimp as I possibly can. Some people just want a nice little taste of shrimp in their community tanks. But remember, back to that point again, shrimp are little and fish love to eat them. So hopefully that puts some people's minds at ease when it comes to keeping shrimp for the first time. And this hobby is awesome. I've made my best friends I've had doing this. It's become my career. It's become my business. All from, just a passion of keeping aquariums and then getting hooked on YouTube videos like 7 years ago and having dozens of tanks. So here I am. Shrimp keeping has changed my life. I hope you enjoy it just 1% as much as I have, because if you do, then it'll all be worth it. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.